Hello and welcome to the review of 2022. It's New Year's Eve right now and it's about 8:30, so I'm very quickly recording a very short video. I hope you all had a great Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, and if not, I hope you all had a great holiday, and here's to 2023. So let's jump in with the 5 things I'm going to try and get better at in 2023. I am very leaky, or at least my telescopes are very leaky. If we look at this image, this is M101, and you can see here a streak of light going down here. Now that was from the filter drawer on my telescope, and when I take imaging now, I actually wrap the telescope in black felt around the focuser and the filter drawer, and the idea of that is to stop the light leaks. And also I use a dew shield now on my Newtonian telescopes, which helps light bleeding in and bouncing around in the telescope tube. So there we go, light leaks. In 2023 I'm hoping to be less leaky. Calibration frames. The importance of calibration frames cannot be underestimated, and also taking correct calibration frames cannot be underestimated. I took calibration frames for this image, but you can quite clearly see there's a massive gradient going across and there's a great big blob of something there. Now I took flats and I stacked the image, yet my flats didn't work. Let's have a look at one of my flats, which is this one here. I've just debayed it, and if I run a quick stretch on this flat, you can visibly see the blob there, and you can also see that it's got exactly the same sort of gradient going across. So why didn't that flat work? And it's because this camera was using a 294C sensor, and when I took the flats they were below 3 seconds duration, and a 294C sensor requires flats above 3 seconds, so you have to take long flats. And I've also discovered that it's beneficial, and I know this is slightly controversial because the general feeling is you don't have to take flats at the same temperature as your lights, but I've also found taking your flats and your dark flats at the same temperature as your lights is beneficial, and it helps. Proper calibration frames, definitely something that I need to work on in 2023. In 2023, I'm going to really work on my processing skills. This is the Heart Nebula, and I have recently realized that if you extract the luminance and then the red, green and blue and process those individually, you can achieve amazing things. I mean really amazing things. This is the luminance, and it's really nice. It's really nice clean data. So it's very interesting to look at this and think, well, actually I can process this. I can do things like removing the stars and then processing this data, and then also combine it together to achieve a different look to a simple RGB image. And for example, you could potentially try and make a Hubble palette from your extracted RGB and luminance data. Now this is something that I'm going to really get into next year, and I think it's the way forwards. Not only that, extracting the stars is really important. So I've got here the stars which were extracted, and then you can individually work on just the data without the stars, and therefore not affect how saturated the stars are, and more importantly the colour of the stars. So that's one of my goals for 2023, is to get better at processing, but also processing by separating out into the constituent luminance, red, green and blue, and then experimenting with combining them to create different types of sort of Hubble-esque style images. In 2023, integration time is the big thing going forwards for me. I really struggle sometimes to get more than sort of 3 hours a night on a target. The rear of my house is north and I can pretty much image all night, and then in the sort of winter months all the southern targets are at the front of the house, but I can only image for about 3 hours maximum a night at the front before I have to bring everything in. This is 3 hours on the hard nebula, and again I've changed the combination of R, G and B to create this image, but if I zoom in a little bit you can see with just 3 hours and a bit of processing it's still got a reasonably large amount of noise there. So if I was to double or triple that exposure time, then that would reduce the amount of noise, particularly the colour noise, where I think that could really be improved. So my big thing for the next year is to work on getting as much integration time as possible on each deep sky object that I'm imaging. Better target planning for my focal length. I am still really bad at selecting the wrong focal length telescope for the object that I'm going to be shooting. This is the Tadpoles Nebula and this is the Flaming Star Nebula, and because I was using a telescope with a 288mm focal length, if I'd thought carefully about my framing I should have really centered around this group of stars and then taken loads of integration time, but I didn't have time. I only managed to get 2 hours and it looks a bit small and a bit rubbish because I didn't have enough integration time, and that you can't tell is the tadpoles, and that you can kind of see it's the flaming star. It's got some bits of interest there, but really it's not very good. And that's because I chose the wrong focal length. Really, I should have chosen a focal length that would just frame the tadpoles, because that's the bit I really was trying to image, and then used the flaming star as a separate object and imaged that. And I could have used maybe a 700mm focal length rather than the 288mm focal length telescope. So in 2023 I am going to use Stellarium to plan how my images will look. Here we are in Stellarium, and I've just quickly put in the focal length of a 130 PDS. This is the Tadpoles Nebula and that's the flaming star there. I've just put in an APS-C sensor, and you can already see that the framing would be far better if I was to use this particular telescope. And also on the flaming star, if I was to frame that would look pretty sensational with this telescope as well. So I'm going to jump into Stellarium a lot more and actually frame up my objects before I image them, and then choose the correct focal length for whatever I'm imaging. Have a fantastic New Year's. Thank you to everybody, and I mean absolutely everybody, who has helped in any way with the channel and supported the channel. That's people commenting, people liking, people subscribing. It's so important to me for everything that you guys contribute to the channel, and I'm really very grateful to every single one of you for subscribing. It makes a huge difference. I just want to leave you with the Hard Nebula. I can't remember how many hours of integration. I think it was only about 3, but it turned out quite well, and you can really see the heart. And of course I changed the colour slightly, so it's not just the hydrogen alpha red. I messed about with the colours a bit and it looks quite groovy, and I think it's one of my better images from this year. Thank you all again for your support this year. Have a fantastic New Year's, and here's to 2023.